Okay, we are live. Hello, everyone. I'm Brigantia Blackbird of Blackbird's Brew. Thank you very much for coming. Today, we're going to be taking a look at True North EuroFaith newsletter. This is run by Gandalf Freyasson and his wife Rowana. Very nice people. This has been one of their ways in which they have tried to get like-minded pagans really connected to each other, people who want to get back to the source and the heart and the foundation of paganism, as well as people who are united by a shared love of country and taking pride in where we live and wanting to preserve its freedoms. So he has been working on this for years and years, and today he gave me permission to share a few excerpts with commentary from his newsletter. So let me just dash over here so you can yeah, okay, this will be a better view. Yeah, that's a much better view for you guys. And this particular edition of the newsletter, it came in two parts. If you can see the two emails there, I want to go over kind of the last part of the first one. To begin with, it was very seasonally. It has all kinds of good information and lore about Imbolc and Charming the Plow and the general pagan celebrations for this time of year, as well as different regional differences. But then after that, he goes on to discuss defining ourselves in our own way. And then he went on to about us making decisions about how to practice in the way that we should wish. And I find these things really important right now. I feel like this is going to resonate with some people, which is why I want to hyper focus that. So let's read a little bit in defining ourselves our own way. We should define and use our own terms our own way and not the way of those who are hostile towards us. We must reject the bigoted way adherents of Abrahamic religions misuse the term pagan. To them, everyone not affiliated with any of their Abrahamic creeds are disrespectfully consigned to some anomalous conglomerate of miscellaneous etceteras. To them, the term pagan is a pejorative and not merely a religious label. I've known Native Americans who justifiably resent their religious practices and beliefs being arbitrarily and incorrectly categorized as some sort of subsect of our religions and traditions. Followers of other non Abrahamic traditions may also, as should we, resent it when their religions are intentionally disrespected and trivialized. This is absolutely a problem in some segments of Christianity. On Monday, Georgia Liberty and we reviewed that ghastly video of this man who I don't know if he's so much Christian as he is someone who wants to sell books with provocative titles. But for people who are of that mindset, they do use pagan as a negative term, as something that is meant to be insulting, or something is wrong with this person, or they're weird, or they're this outcast, and that's simply not what paganism is. And those of us who practice, we all know that. And I know that this is a difficult hurdle for some pagans, particularly some newcomers who may feel all the hostility towards the label pagan without being able to separate that sense of hostility from the reality of what the word actually means and how we use it today. And it's a big hurdle for some people, particularly those who might be a little bit more sensitive to public opinion. And I get that. Not everyone is as hard-headed as me, to where I'm going to do what I want, and the rest of the world can catch up if it feels like it. But other people have a greater the greater sensitivity. I think that's the way I'll put it, towards other people. And I don't say this as anything against them. It's just their nature. So I can see how this would be hard for them. But this goes on to read, if asked what they called their religion, most of our Eurofolk ancestors would simply have used the same name that they did for their clan or tribe. Most of those in other parts of the world did the same. Religious and spiritual practices and beliefs were inseparable from tribal or ethnic traditions and lore. No one was so insecure in their beliefs that they felt compelled to impose their religion upon something else. Nor did anyone really think that there was something inherently bad in someone else having their own religions and traditions. How true that is. And from what I understand, also from my research, is that when the Christians did come in and they wanted to convert and they were wanting to know about the local religion, they essentially had to define their term about what they meant about religion, because for our ancestors, this was the customs. This is how we do things, the way that the way that we happen to live here. This is, these are our own traditions. There wasn't this hyper organized, hyper top down, we say what goes and what doesn't go, a kind of approach to spirituality that just wasn't really the case. And so I think that has been an ongoing problem, especially for honest-hearted Christians, my friend Amanda, who, she does not use pagan in a pejorative way. She uses it in a descriptive way, the same way I would use it for myself, to provide a reference for a belief system. But in our conversations, sometimes she'll bring up concepts or ideas, or what do you guys do about this? How do you feel about that? And unfortunately, sometimes both myself and Georgia Liberty and other people in the Blackbirds Brew group, we have to give her kind of unsatisfying answers, because again, it's not a top-down centralized authority kind of a structure for pagan spirituality. There is nuance. We have a lot of principles that we think are very important, but the application of them and what that means for the standards we hold to ourselves to in our own lives, that's very personalized, very independent. And there are some concepts that there just isn't a one-for-one comparison between Abrahamic faiths and pagan faiths. Let's scroll down a bit and go here. When we and just about everyone else say pagan, what we really mean are the religious and spiritual traditions, beliefs, and practices of our pre Christian Eurofolk ancestors and the gods and goddesses they believed in and venerated. Various Eurofolk clans and tribes, antiquity's original bitter clingers and basket of deplorables, who remained loyal and true to the ancestral gods and goddesses of their people, were the first heathens or rural dwellers the Christian Romans contemptuously referred to as pagans. It was only later that pagan became an umbrella slur against everyone, non-Eurofolk as well as Eurofolk, who did not believe in nor practice any of the Abrahamic creeds. If we were to use as broad a term as we can for the entire family of Eurofolk pagan religions we can now revive, Eurofaith is as good as any. The name Eurofaith is a synonymous alternative to pagan, enables us to recognize that the non-Abrahamic religions of other peoples are as distinct and as worthy of respect as ours, without subordinating someone else's religion to ours, nor ours to someone else's. The right of everyone to practice and believe in their ancestral religions and traditions and to revere their ancestral deities deserves to be respected. 1,000% agree. Now, I don't think I'll be taking up the term Eurofolk for myself anytime. I think pagan, Norse pagan, someone who practices witchcraft or Wicca. I mean, that's something good enough for me. I'm very comfortable with that. I think that if I were to embrace another term for myself, I would essentially be giving in to the people who use pagan as a pejorative, and I would rather reclaim the word. But I mean, like with everything else, this is a very personal decision. This isn't a right or wrong answer. Gandalf, he likes his Eurofaith. I like my pagan. And you know what? We seem to operate pretty comfortably in the same space. We both know what each other means by that. And we both know that it is deeply personal spiritual traditions that we are drawing upon, and that it isn't about anyone outside of ourselves. And really, whatever religion you're practicing, it shouldn't be about anyone else besides you and the deity or deities that you are worshiping. I don't think it should be an act of rebellion or defiance or anything untoward. It shouldn't be anything that sullies the nature of spirituality. It shouldn't be about proving any kind of a point. It should simply be a descriptor of the principles that you believe in and live by and are willing to practice. It's not something that has to be imposed upon anyone else. It is something that can and should be taught, but it isn't about trying to force people into any one way of being or doing things. And I think that's a lesson our modern world would do well to remember rather. So this brings us to the second part of the newsletter that I really wanted to focus on. It's titled Freer to Sincerely Practice Our Religion. This is our first edition of our newsletter for 2023 CE, 2273 RE, which refers to a more pagan time scale. We will continue with the regular seasonal editions celebrating the holidays of this new year. We will again have other editions for other holidays and occasions, and Rowana and I each are planning editions covering other topics concerning the revival and practice, our pagan EuroFaith religion and traditions, and various issues which confront us. Ideas for some of these editions can come from discussions with various subscribers or those otherwise in fellowship with us. If there are subjects you would like to see included, please send us your suggestions. Now, I really bring this up because Gandalf here, myself, Georgia Liberty, other pagan content creators, whether it is through video content or through any other mechanism, We are seeking feedback. We are wanting to know what people are struggling with. We want to know what's on people's minds, whether it's your hopes, your fears, or I have a brilliant idea and I'd like to present it to the community. Whatever it is that's lying on your heart, we want to know about it, and we would like to address it in some fashion. And if we, are, and if it's not a good fit for us to cover, we would encourage you to speak up on your own for yourself, but also to be in contact with other pagans and have more of a back and forth ebb and flow. Symbiotic relationship with your fellow believers. And that's essentially what's being focused here. But, it all begins with opening up those lines of communication, hugely important. It goes on to say there's a growing number of EuroFaith pagans who are quietly practicing our revived religion and traditions. Many are now able as solitary practitioners to call upon and develop relationships and regular invocations or devotionals with our various gods and goddesses. We will always encourage each of you to make these practices part of your daily habit and routine. To be, as we are, devotional polytheists, whether you use that or some other name to describe yourself. And even more of us are now freer to publicly identify as pagans while openly practicing our revived and reinvigorated religion. Sincere pagans are coalescing into an emerging traditional or conservative alternate pagan community, a reawakened EuroFaith free of neo-Marxist ideology antithetical to genuine pagan principles. This enables a growing number of pagans to believe in and practice our revived pagan religion closer to original beliefs and traditions as best as we can understand them. I want to pause right there. This is hugely important. And I think that more of us not only need to be more open about who we are. I think also if we are struggling with being that open and struggling, to come out of the proverbial broom closet, let's ask ourselves why that is. What is it that we're actually afraid of? And is the proportion of our fear, is it a reflection upon whatever we think would threaten us in the event that more people were more aware of us? Because at a certain point, I mean, if you are in the broom closet, do you ever get tired? Do you ever get tired having to perhaps censor yourself in conversations? Do you ever get tired of having to essentially sneak around and almost have a double life if you're wanting to associate with other pagans, or, having to do it on the sly just so the rest of your life, remains, at least on the surface, undisturbed? I mean, that's hard. Anytime you're having to live a double life for any reason. Before I left the Jehovah's Witnesses, I was living a double life for quite a while. There's this public face I put on for the church, and then there was everything else I did in the rest of my life. And those areas increasingly came into conflict. And I knew that it couldn't last. And I would suppose that it might not last in the case of people who are trying to hide their paganism as well as function in the world of non-pagans. Um, I will also say that once you are known as for who you and what you are, I don't think it's as scary as what we sometimes build it up to be. I don't know if the microphone picked up on the sound of the siren just now, but I just thought the timing of that sound, as I'm trying to convince people that it's not going to be as scary as what they might think of. Oh, geez, I swear, the universe is giggling. That's what that is. But once you take that step, once you take that plunge, and once when people ask you what your beliefs are and you're able to just give them a straight answer, that simplifies so much of life. And honestly, that's your birthright as a free human being alive on the earth. You should be afraid. And none of us should have to, skirt around the nature of who and what we are and what we believe and what we stand for. I mean, it's indecent. And it's terrible that there are people out there who are still trying to make an issue of this. And I'm not saying that we're going to see a perfect solution for it in our lifetimes, but I do know that every time someone says I'm pagan and it has nothing to do with hurting anyone or upsetting anyone, it doesn't have anything to do with being anti anything in particular. It's just, this is where I find my spiritual connection. This is what's helping inspire me to become a better person, to look at myself and think, okay, how do I improve? How do I live a better life than what I lived before? I mean, that's what it all comes down to. And honestly, the good people in this world, that is enough for them. But to finish this up here, we invite anyone who wants to heed the call to the return to the gods and goddesses of our people to fellowship with us in our True North EuroFaith. This includes those who are new to our revived faith and who want to learn more, as well as those who are more knowledgeable and experienced who could help share in encouraging and mentoring others. We will share more links or contact information for the videos or sites of worthwhile pagan content creators. Tell your friends and fellow pagans they can be added to the list to receive this newsletter by contacting us at gandalf.freyasson@gmail.com. Contact information will always be kept confidential, and any poetry, prose, invocations, or other notices or information you may wish to share with other pagans are always welcome. Gandalf Freyasson, EuroFaith Elder. So those are the highlights. Gandalf is encouraging us to come together as he always does in these newsletters. And I hope that his willingness to touch on some of these more sensitive topics, as well as engage in a general education work for pagans, I hope that encourages people to, sign up for his newsletter, to reach out. If you want to have an opportunity, I can't guarantee that you'll get to meet him because his schedule is kind of coming and going. But if you do join the Gilded group, and there's a link in the description, you at least have the opportunity to meet Gandalf and to be able to converse with him. And, that's something that I'm trying to encourage my own group. Let's not just, shout words at each other. Let's not just throw links at someone and say, oh, please do this. Let's have actual conversations. Let's get to the bottom of some concepts. Let's also think about what we can do as a people in more practical terms, because there's lots of different ways to start sowing the seeds for a better world. I think we all know that the status quo just can't go on for forever. I think that's just a reality. And because we know that it can't last forever, and because we see that there's a lot of things that are looking pretty shaky on their rather broken foundations, this is the perfect time to sow new seeds, lay new foundations, to build something that is more balanced, more natural, more in keeping with our own belief systems. We have this opportunity. We only need to seize it. And I think one of the reasons why the gods are speaking so loudly to so many people these days, it's not just because we finally have people who are opening their ears to hear them. I think a lot of it has to do with just, this is the time to come back. The world desperately needs us. I mean, in my own series, Modern Problems, Pagan Solutions, that's where I'm really sharing a lot of principles of, look, we have these ideas. Let's just apply them and let's see what happens. And let's, work towards creating that better life for ourselves and set a good example. And that can in turn inspire other people. That's what it's really all about. So that's the nature of my work, the nature of the work of Georgia Liberty, and definitely the work of Gandalf Freyasson, who has been at this effort to both educate pagans, to push out the nasty Marxist influences, and also to help connect people one to one another. He's been at this since before I was born. So he has a lot of experience in this kind of work. And thankfully, with our technology of today, he has a wider reach than what he probably thought would be possible at the beginning of his own outreach journey. So definitely let's support him. Let's support all of our pagan content creators. They are doing something. They are speaking up, and they are contradicting all of the ridiculous narratives out there that are trying to mischaracterize us, that are trying to lump us into one group, and that are outright distorting what our beliefs actually are. Because every time we put out a truth, it makes it that much harder for the people who are opposed to us to paint us with that broad stroke. Let's contradict a few of their stereotypes, shall we? Let's start having some sensible conversations, and let's stop treating these things as bigger or scarier than what they actually are. I'm a firm believer in the idea that the bigger they are, the harder they fall. And I look at a lot of these big institutions that might seem so overwhelming at first, but I think it takes a lot of effort and a lot of duct tape to keep these things together. I think they're vulnerable. I don't necessarily know what all of their vulnerabilities are right now, but let's start testing it. Let's start exploiting weaknesses when we find them, and let's not just give up every time we get a little bit of pushback. So those are my thoughts for today. The Gilded Group does have a workshop that we are doing this evening. Again, a link to join the group is in the description box below. We've been doing a workshop on challenging gods. And because it's February, we're focusing on more of, which of the gods embody traits that essentially represents some kind of romantic ideal. What traits do they have that we think would be beneficial if, husbands and fathers and, were to embody those things? I think it could be very interesting to see where that conversation goes. And also, it kind of makes us think about the deities in a different way, because for those of us who were raised as some kind of Christian, God was this almighty, omnipotent everything, but also a very androgynous, very sexless creature who seemed to almost reject the natural urges of creation. Certainly the way we experiencing them. But when it comes to pagan religions, the gods, they marry, they have wives. Some of them have mistresses, unfortunately. But they have children. They take on the business of life in a way that just is, there is no correlation for that in the Abrahamic traditions. So appreciating that aspect of them, and also seeing that sometimes these masculine gods who we admire, we might also be looking for human partners who have similar traits, or they might have traits that represent some kind of psychological need we have within themselves. And of course, our brothers, they can look up to the gods for absolute inspiration. How do you want to treat your wife? How do you want to be raising your children? How do you want to preside over your household? What are some of the pitfalls? What are some of the strengths of the gods? What lessons can you take from it? There's a lot of productive conversations to be had, and I hope we have a really great one tonight. I'm going to be going into our group chat channel. We call it the Banquet Hall at 6:30 p.m. Central Time this evening, which translates to 7:30 Eastern, 5:30 Mountain, and 4:30 Pacific if you're on either side of the ocean. Uh, I don't know what time zone that is. You'll have to do that math yourself, but that's where we are here in the United States. So looking forward to it, gang. And I think that's it for today. Hope to see you at the workshop tonight. Bye, everyone.